join. Been a couple of pretty hectic weeks here as the season goes on. Don't like missing any episodes. First time we've ever actually had to skip an episode. Just the way road construction really is a pain in the arse. I don't know if they have that, or I know Hayden down in the south. It's a little bit of snow touches the ground, and they got to close everything down for
Oh,
the
100%.
for the next 4 days. We don't get that luxury. I can remember one time where I could barely see from me to the as far as my laptop is away, driving in a snowstorm to deliver product in a truck, and somehow made it back okay. Um, Half the time the snow drifts were so far over, I was heading east. I was driving in the westbound lane, having to put my flashers on, hoping I wasn't going to run into anybody.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was something I don't ever care to do again.
This
But
was today?
no, 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 no. This was
Oh,
this is probably 5 or 6 years ago.
I thought, dang, I already
Today
got
the
snow
roads, it
again.
was all interstate. It was good. The only issue that I had today was the I could top the cruise out at 65. They had governors on them. So, my question for you is do you take a guess, Hayden, of how many vehicles I passed in my if eight there and back, an 8 hour drive. It was a 10 hour drive, five there, five back. How many vehicles do you think I passed on the interstate today?
I'll go 7. That's a random number.
Seven. It was one.
Really?
Yeah.
Was
Uh-huh.
it some boomer that was just, going for a
No,
little.
it was just a guy that was hauling a trailer, and he uh, he was hauling a trailer, and it was just taking a sweet time, I guess, and it was kind of right before I was about to hit some road construction where the two lanes was going to turn into one. So I was like, can I pass him? And he was kind of going slow. So I was able to get around him and pass him. So
Here,
that was
here's
that
my
was the
question. How much quicker was it getting home from Fargo after the North or South Dakota State game a few weeks ago versus today?
it was like, well, like it was like an hour faster. Usually if I'm the one driving, I've got a little bit more of a lead foot than my parents do. So I'll kind of push the speed limit, get up to about 79, 82 range, where if my parents are driving, they're at 75, 76. So the there isn't much of a you know I can probably shave off from about 3 hour 45 minutes from 4 hours. So that the winning does help here, which it was a we didn't even get to talk about it because we didn't have an episode last week. But and I frankly, as when I was getting ready for this show, I was going to go back to week 8 because this week I didn't even get a chance to watch really any of the games because we had playoff games, so we were playing during that time and driving back. So I didn't get a chance. This is probably the first time in I don't know how long where I've gone 2 weeks without really watching college football.
Right.
So my team of the week here, if we're gonna go to week, well, you can do a week 9 team of the week. I'll go to week 8, and I will pick NDSU, bringing the Dakota marker back home because I have to. There's no other choice. It was their first time in 5 tries that they were finally able to get a win over those guys at South Dakota State. It was a tremendous game, tremendous atmosphere. As we were walking in, they were handing out these towels, which really cool
Oh,
here,
that's awesome.
and they light up. Something
Oh
that
man, that's
I
even
really
that's even cooler. That's
and
awesome.
so like if you've ever seen NDSU do their intro, they come out to Thunderstruck and they shut the lights off in the dome.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
as they walk out, places going nuts. They run out and they changed it up a little bit. They used to run out of a helmet. Now they've got like smoke shooting up and like all of those going, lighting up. And then they also have an app that once the lights come on, it like syncs to your phone that recognizes that you're there. And that was also flashing. So it was a really cool atmosphere. There was just a buzz in that place. You could tell it was packed from the gills. Like when we walked in, probably like an hour before, we were 2 rows from the top, right behind the student section, and you know, there were probably some people that would have, if they realized it, they probably would have been pissed because students stand for most of the game. Which, if you're gonna sit there and complain that people are cheering and standing up, then you probably shouldn't be at a football game.
Absolutely not. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. That drives me insane when people complain about that.
And we basically ended up standing for most of the game. It was a defensive battle. South Dakota State moved the ball down the field pretty well, and then they missed the field. They went for it on 4th and 1, tried to QB sneak it, and the quarterback false started. He started going ahead before the ball was snapped, so they ended up settling for like a 53-yard field goal. Clanks off the upright, and NDSU was able to pin them deep, and South Dakota State moved the ball pretty well. NDSU was able to go and score, I think, in the second quarter, have a good drive, hit Raja Nelson to go up 7-0. And then on a 3rd and 1, South Dakota State, their backup quarterback, they do a bit of a 2-back quarterback system. They brought him in, who was actually a Nebraska baseball commit and got hurt and ended up transferring to South Dakota State to play quarterback. He'll probably be their starter next year. And he breaks like a 66-yard run. And that was kind of the fracas that happened after is the South Dakota State's original starter tried blocking a defensive tackle. And the defensive tackle, I think it was Houston, I can't remember his first name, just bulldozes Gronowski. And then he gets up and then tries to like get in the guy's face and he shoves him down again. And then the flags come in. South Dakota State O-linemen are coming over. They're trying to start a fight. That's when you see the flags flying. And then in the background, you can see South Dakota State's quarterback doing the Costco boom dance where he was just high stepping and there was nobody there to celebrate. I don't know if you know the dance, but that was all the excitement. That was all the offense South Dakota State could muster, which was a wild stat to me. Was they never ran a play in NDSU's red zone. They didn't have a single red zone play, which is a credit to the defense. And the right before half, South Dakota State took the lead on a field goal, and it was kind of a back and forth. It was just a tremendous defensive effort by both teams. And then with about 6 minutes left, NDSU gets the ball back. Cam Miller had his moment. Big knock on Cam Miller throughout his career was in big moments against South Dakota State. Hadn't beaten South Dakota State up to this point. Goes and leads them on a drive. And right after the 2-minute warning, the first play out of the 2-minute warning, he hits Raja Nelson on a beautiful fade route in the corner. Place is going nuts. I'm all excited, and I'm still there thinking like, oh man, they still got to. They're going to give the ball back to their 2-time national champion quarterback, and they were moving the ball. And then a great play by, I can't even remember the guy's name. Made a tremendous play, undercut the route, able to intercept the first turnover Gronowski has had. And that was when it finally set in that this is it. NDSU is going to find a way to bring the Dakota marker back home. They sprint over, get the rock, and just a tremendous game. It was cool to see the atmosphere. The atmosphere in the dome hadn't been like that in quite a few years. So it's nice to finally see that get back to where it should be.
I watched the end of that game. Did y'all storm the field or did
No?
Okay, I can remember.
That is one of those things with NDSU that it's pretty cool. Is that I don't think I've ever seen the students ever stormed the field, the Fargo Dome. The only time that ever really happens is in Frisco when NDSU wins the Natty. That is kind of one of those things that's in Bison lore is that they only storm the field for national titles. Last year when UND finally beat NDSU, they stormed the Alaris Center Field. It doesn't happen it's rare that NDSU storms the field. It's strictly a national title thing.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I've never followed that. Like, all I know is, and this isn't something to sound arrogant, like as an Alabama fan, I know, like, I think to Bryant Denny and maybe the Swamp, actually, believe it or not, too, in Florida, those are the only SEC stadiums that have never been stormed. Like, the fields have never been stormed there. And so I was curious to see from an FCS perspective if that was because NDSU's kind of been the Alabama of
Yep.
the FCS for so long. I didn't know if that was the case up there. I couldn't remember. It was late when that game ended over here, down here, so I couldn't remember if y'all stormed the field or not. But still, yeah, that's an awesome experience, and that's what rivalry games should be. I mean, I know it's frustrating in the moment watching games come down to the wire, but man, it's even sweeter when you're able to pull it off. Like, as stressful as several Iron Bowls have been in Jordan Hare, like the last two have been incredible. Like I mean, even the ones where Alabama came out on the losing end, they were great games, but as a fan, they stung, especially
Yep.
the kick six. But
Yeah.
but yeah. So it's cool when that happens. Like, that's one thing when people are like, oh, they struggled with this team. Like, I got a lot of flack last year for Alabama struggling with Auburn, but I'm like, it's a rivalry game. Anything can happen. We came out with a win, and the Milrow Miracle was just the icing on the cake. It was one of the greatest plays of all time. So yeah, I was, like I said, I was just curious to see how it was from that perspective of how often NDSU storms the field.
Yeah. Well, and so to back up a little bit, the best part about the whole thing is we were kind of around some Jackrabbit fans. They were all friendly. It was all cordial. There was one funny story I saw in the concourse of the Dome right when we walked in. There was a couple of Bison fans walking by this Jackrabbit fan, and they go up to him. NDSU fans go up to this Jackrabbit fan. Hey, good luck today. It's going to be a great game. And they stick his hand out to like shake hands, like, and this Jackrabbit fan was like having none of it. He's like, no, screw you. You guys are gonna just whip your hand back like that. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. Like, no, we're wishing you good luck. And I was like, I kind of slow played it because I was like, I gotta see if they're actually what they're gonna do here. And
Right.
they did. They shook. NDSU fans are classy. We shook hands, and NDSU, they also do the horns up. They're actually the originator. Texas stole it from us.
Nice.
Of
course they did.
And so as you know, the horns down thing is Texas fans get very sensitive about it. And I'm not, if the other team wins, they have the right to do it.
Right.
I don't like seeing it, and I've seen a lot of it over the last 5 years from Jackrabbit fans. When I was at the Morgan Wallen concert, when we figured out that these guys sitting behind us were Jackrabbit fans, I could hear them in between songs. They were just yelling, horns down, horns down, horns down. And I looked and I said, we're going to whoop y'all's ass this year. And so, I mean, that added a little bit of fuel to the fire here. And I was sitting around them, and then we met these guys that was sitting next to us. He was like from Kansas, and he went to Kansas State and was a Kansas State fan, but just kind of cheered for him because went there. So he never actually had a true college football team, and so he settled on Kansas State or on South Dakota State. So him and his buddies, they drove like 9 hours. Actually, he was 3.5 hours from Manhattan, and then they drove up to Fargo. Manhattan's like 9. He's like 3.5 hours away from Manhattan. And so they drove like 12 hours up to go see the game. And nice guys, cordial, friendly. And then these people in front of us, they were also, they were Jackrabbit fans, but they were, whatever. And there was one point after South Dakota State scored and the PAT was blocked. Their head coach was he was being a whiny little bitch and screaming at the refs for something. And I just yelled, "Go cry, Jimmy! Go cry!" And they're like, "Oh, I'm not mad." I was like, "Hey, you know what? We're all, you guys win or do something good. You can talk shit. I don't care." And for the most part, they didn't have much to talk about. Neither did we. But
Right.
once that pick was sealed, I tapped the girl that was sitting in front of us on the shoulder, and I had the two, because they have a thing called like ears up, and I just went put them down, and that was fun. That was a lot of pent up. Been waiting to do that for a while.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Nothing like a good rivalry,
Yeah.
regardless of where.
And after I did it, we all shook hands, said we'll see you in Frisco, because that's probably what's going to happen.
Oh, you think there's going to be a rematch or a national championship rematch in Frisco?
It's possible. I think this year in the FCS right now, there is it's a 3-horse race between NDSU, Montana State, and South Dakota State. That game, the NDSU South Dakota State game was, in my opinion, and right now the way that the committee is looking at it, was the for the 1 seed and not having to go to Bozeman to play Montana State, because right now they're undefeated. They have an FBS win over New Mexico. But
Right.
if you're gonna ask me and most people in that follow the FCS as closely as I do, the NDSU still has the best win, even though that it is against an FCS team. But if NDSU and South Dakota State were to both play New Mexico, NDSU would be favored by probably 10 points.
Oh, wow.
So as long as NDSU doesn't slip up their next 3 games, they're locked into the 1 seed. The loser, depending on what happens, I don't think Montana State's going to slip up the rest of the year. So as of now, South Dakota State's probably going to be going to Bozeman for the FCS semifinals.
Oh, wow. So North Dakota State hasn't lost a single game since the Colorado game, right?
Correct. They had they sweat out the game against East Tennessee, but that was
I remember that. I do remember that. I couldn't remember.
That was really the only scare up to the South Dakota State game. They went and played Murray State last week, who should not be an FCS team. They would probably struggle against some of the top teams in D2. They were not good.
Yeah, they don't have a very good history.
And they go to South Dakota State this Saturday. In that game, they're going to put up like 70.
Jeez.
But
Ooh.
anyways.
Cornflakes that they piss in if they got to play both of y'all back to back.
Yeah, well, NDSU was actually the only team that didn't want them in the league. They had to get like a 2/3 vote. And for some reason, the rest of the league voted them in, which I guess you need a doormat. I don't know if you ever watched the show The League. Everybody needs their taco bye week. And I guess that's what Murray State is now.
Yeah.
But Hayden, who do you have for your college football week 9 team of the week?
I looked around because I wanted to avoid my SEC bias down here. I looked around several different conferences, and I kept going back to to Texas A&M. I mean, you look at the stat sheet, none of the players had any stats that were phenomenal, but they kind of hung around the whole entire game against LSU, and at the end of the game, they were able to pull it off. They were LSU made a few mistakes, and they were basically able to break them in the fourth quarter and be able to pull it off. And now they're 7-1, 6-0 in conference play, or was it 5-0? Maybe it's 5-0 in conference play.
In the driver's seat to go to Atlanta.
Yeah, they're very well on that path. They got South Carolina this week, which on the road in Columbia, that's a trap game. We're gonna
find out about Texas A&M, because that was one that was I get, because when I was doing the week 10 preview, that was a game, because I'm not going to sit here and talk like I'm an elite South Carolina mind. I'm not even an elite Texas A&M mind. I really like Mike Elko.
Right, I do
He's
too.
adding the URE to Colt in Texas A&M. I got to pat myself on the back on that one. That one's pretty good.
That was really good.
Uh,
Oh man.
and he's proving that you can win. He, instead of just being the recruiter that Jimbo was, he's actually proving he can coach and develop guys and build a program.
And believe it or not, he said something similar to that in his press conference after the
Yeah,
game Saturday. He said, "There's no politician running this place anymore, but we're here to win and that we're here to develop players." And I agree. I've been saying that since about week 5 when I realized, okay, this team might be for real. That yes, Jimbo's won a national championship. They paid Jimbo way too much money to play there or to coach there.
best $72 million money can buy is not having Jimbo Fisher coach.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you're able to get him out of there, absolutely. Um, and now Elko's got them on track in year 1, so it just kind of goes to show. Jimbo had that top recruiting class in 2021, 2022, whenever it was, and did nothing to show for it. And now Mike Elko in year 1 has got this team. I mean, there's 4 games left in the regular season. However, those 4 games are going to there. There's still a lot going to play for, a lot to sort out. I I still think there's about 6 or 7 SEC teams that can make the college football playoff right now.
Yeah.
And we're gonna a little bit more is gonna be played out this weekend, but the following weekend when Alabama goes on the road to play LSU and Georgia plays Ole Miss and I forget who Tennessee plays that week. There's gonna be a lot to sort it out by that week, but yeah, um, A&M's on the right track right now. Their schedule is favorable as well. Even if they lose that game at Texas, that's 1 loss in the conference. If they win out and lose that game at Texas or against Texas, um, that's 1 loss in the conference, and that's still probably good enough to get into Atlanta.
Oh,
So
I think so too. And actually, well, I don't. It wouldn't be a. Well, yeah. If Texas beats A&M, and that's A&M's only loss, that could be back-to-back weeks where they're playing each other.
100%.
But you brought up, next week is going to be is a play is basically an extension of the playoffs because whoever loses LSU Alabama is more than likely out. They probably will not be making the playoff.
Right.
And if Ole Miss loses to Georgia, Ole Miss is out. I think if Georgia loses to Ole Miss, I think there's still a way for Georgia to get in with 2 losses. But if you're Ole Miss, you're looking at that game that's a must win. You have to find a way to get a win there, or you're not.
100%.
You're going to be playing in the Camping World Bowl.
Lane Kiffin is going to be throwing everything he can at Kirby Smart that weekend, because he knows what's on the line. It's all or nothing. It's going to be one. And Lane Kiffin in an all or nothing game is scary because he will do some stuff that is really, really stupid. But sometimes that stuff works. That's the scary part of it all. So, like 4th and 5 on your own 37-yard line early in the first quarter, Lane Kiffin's probably going to be like, I'm going to go for it and see what happens. So he's either going to find a way to keep this game interesting, or Georgia's going to blow the doors off of Ole Miss going to be up by like 30 at halftime. There's no in between.
Yeah. Oh, I was thinking that same thing, but it was there wasn't a whole lot even so. Georgia was Texas A&M LSU. You're gonna have to refresh my memory on other games that were.
There was Alabama Missouri, which Alabama.
Yeah, there wasn't much to talk about on that one.
Yeah, and it was refreshing to see that as an Alabama fan. That was very refreshing to see. Encouraging to see the defense want to finish off the shutout too. That was one of those things, and especially with Eli Drinkwitz, man, that dude's a dork. That dude's a dork, yelling, kept telling Alabama players "F you," taunting Alabama players on the sideline, running his mouth. Like I'm like, dude, just go away. I'm glad we shut him out because that sent a message. Like our worst team in 17 years was able to come in and shut you out. Granted, Brady Cook went out in the second quarter. You didn't have your best running back. Your offense was basically Luther Burden or bust. But defense played disciplined and was able to get the shutout. So that was very refreshing to see. Another SEC game. What were the other? Auburn ended up beating Kentucky, which Kentucky is starting to show that they're not very good. Probably will not make a bowl game this year. A
They
lot of
were.
fans like,
I think that's more Auburn being inspired. That was. Hugh Freeze at Liberty. Coach from a hospital bed. Him missing the team playing. That was his. That was his team inspirational moment there.
oh, for sure, and he looked awful on that sideline. Like you could tell, he felt like garbage. Um, but then there was also Vanderbilt, Texas, and Vanderbilt about pulled it off again. That's the scary
They
thing
hung
about
in
all
there. I
this.
was kind of following it a little bit after our game ended, and I saw that it was a 7 point game. We were eating at the time, so I wasn't really able to watch. But it looked like Vanderbilt. They're not going to make the playoff, but they are. Tennessee better be ready because that game that game is for state bragging rights.
Oh,
Vanderbilt
100%.
has every reason to be confident and not believe that they're not going to win.
And could you imagine Tennessee going into Nashville with a playoff spot on the line, and Vanderbilt sitting there like, all right, we get a shot to ruin their shot at the playoffs.
Wasn't that a few years ago? I think it had to have been in the Butch Jones era where Vanderbilt upset Tennessee and Vanderbilt frats were blaring Rocky Top like the entire night or something like that.
Might have been. I can't remember, but it sounds familiar. Um, but you were talking about South Carolina earlier. I wanted to bring this up with the whole A&M thing to bring it back to what I was talking about. I South Carolina's defensive line, believe me, I sweated out 60 minutes with this South Carolina defensive line less than 3 weeks ago. They're really, really good. They're probably top five in the country. Like that defensive line is nasty. So it's going to be very interesting to see in their home stadium against an inspired Texas A&M team how South Carolina responds. I don't know if they have what it takes to pull off the upset offensively, but defensively they have a great opportunity to keep this game close. So that game's going to be fun. That's probably one of the most under the radar games this weekend.
Well, and I think it's gonna be interesting to see how Wegman plays because he was essentially benched last week by the way it sounds. And if that D line is able to get after South Carolina, it's going to be interesting to see what Mike Elko does.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, gosh, Sellers. I was thinking Sanders, but I'm thinking of Colorado. But Sellers is a really good quarterback too. So that D line going up against him is going to be interesting. And then you got Rocket Sanders at running back, former Arkansas running back as well. Believe me, I still have nightmares about South Carolina and that defensive line, and it's been almost 3 weeks. Thankfully, we were able to pull off that win, but my gosh, that team gave me nightmares for the whole week and a half, and still sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night thinking about that game. So
Yeah,
they did their job. They made me cringe.
yeah. But let's look ahead here to week 10. We got a pretty good slate here. We've talked Texas A&M, South Carolina. Um, the other big one is 3 versus 4 here in Happy Valley, Penn State versus Ohio State. And Hayden, you and I, we were texting each other kind of back and forth a little bit on Saturday or Sunday, But this is probably the best opportunity that James Franklin has since they won in 16 to beat Ohio State. They might have to do it without Drew Aller, who was a game time decision, but it sounded like the backup didn't miss a beat under whoever it was. I don't know the guy's name, but sounds like they also, even if Aller does play, they might even try and have a package ready for the backup. That's just some Josh Koldenecki. Right now, one of the best hires of the offseason is Franklin going to get this guy. As you can see, look at Kansas right now.
Bo
The
Pribula is the backup. Looks like Diego Pavia, honestly.
yeah, but the right now, I mean, Ohio State, they struggled to beat Nebraska. Ever they're beat up on the offensive line, which was a question mark going into the season. And now that they don't have that depth that they've had in past years, so they haven't looked as good. It sounds like they're going to be moving Donovan Smith out to left tackle, who is at guard. But I think, and that's a problem because Penn State's D line is a top 5 defensive line in all of college football this year. You go look at like what Michigan did last year to them, where they were they ran the ball 32 straight times because they just couldn't throw the ball. As the looks like following along on my phone, Freddie Freeman scored another 2. So the Dodgers are trying to claw their way back.
Yep, that is exactly what just happened. My TV's 30 seconds behind.
I don't have the TV. I'm following it on ESPN on the ESPN app, but Ohio State fans kind of reading the tea leaves here. They are not feeling as confident as what they usually are going in against Penn State. They're getting a little nervous. This is I've heard a few of them say that if Ryan Day doesn't win, they're done with him, which is kind of funny.
It's hilarious.
But the big key for Penn State is the receivers are going to have to find a way to get separation. In the losses that Penn State has had over the years, it's been the lack there of a passing attack to been able to consistently run the ball, but when they've needed to go and make a play, they have not been able to. That's why Penn State went and stole Julian Fleming from Ohio State. The tight end whose name I can't think of.
I just looked him up because he's their leading receiver. I think it's Tyler Warren.
Yes, Tyler Warren.
Yeah.
Also, it's going to be interesting to see what Kotelnicki does as far as the game plan goes to try to get him involved. And I think you got to get him involved early and often to where put those safeties back, which is going to open it up for Nick Singleton and Katron Allen.
Right.
And on the opposite end, Ohio State, JT Tuilomalau. Oh, I butchered that. I'll just say JTT. And Jack Sawyer, they were top 10 recruits in that recruiting class, and they have not shown up. They have not delivered in any big game that Ohio State has played. And when Ohio State has lost, it's because they have not been good up front, and they have to play and dominate the game. A couple of years ago, when Ohio State went in there, JTT was the player of the week in college football. They're going to need that type of effort from him if they want to win.
Absolutely. Ohio State has been such an interesting team this year because they just, as the Dodgers probably are about to tie this game up. Yep, they are. Wow. This game is tied. They are, I don't know how to describe them. Like Will Howard, is he really the guy you want in a big game?
This is okay. It's been, as of now, it's been the Penn State of 21 to 23.
Yeah,
I think that might be the best way. And right now, I would still give Ohio State the edge because when we talked about this game, when we previewed the Big Ten on your show, um, Penn State and Ohio State are the same teams. The difference is that Ohio State had better athletes where they were able to show it off. And Ohio State, that's kind of been what they've been, especially since they've been beat up front, where they've really struggled running the ball. But between Travion Henderson and Junkins, they are so talented. And on the outside, Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Ibuka.
But Jeremiah Smith's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Regardless, love or hate Ohio State, Jeremiah Smith is one of the best athletes I've ever seen.
Where they where they'll hit a big explosive play, and that's kind of been their offense.
Yeah.
Where so which also goes into, if you're Penn State, make them grind it out, see if they can, and then when they get in the red zone, make them settle for field goals.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of what. Yeah. That's kind of where I'm leaning at this point. Is who's going to be that guy for Ohio State to step up and have a big game? Because, yes, they spent a crap ton of money in the portal this offseason. They got a lot of guys. They've got Judkins. Of course, they got Smith, but that was from recruiting. But they've also got Caleb Downs, and he's been a no-show up to this point for Ohio State.
Same with Denzel Burke.
Yeah, there's been a lot of guys who have just not shown up. Judkins has been decent, and he very well could be the guy that steps up in this game. But I don't know, man. This is the first year where I could pick either team and have an argument for the other. It pisses me off to no end that this game is not a night game. Like, it drives me crazy that Fox gets priority over this game. But if they do, why don't they move it to an 8:00 game? Like, why don't they do like CBS and do an 8:00 game every week, once a year? Like, come on. Like, I'm so frustrated. I'm so tired of this game being played at noon. It deserves so much better. But I don't know. I'm not the schedule maker.
I as someone that, the biggest game of the year is played at noon Eastern time, I don't mind it, because if I had to sit and wait all day for Michigan Ohio State, especially the last 3 years, I would have been a wreck, because those games leading up to it seems like it takes forever to start. Even I got up I got up at about 7:30 last year before the Michigan Ohio State. I got up, I went and worked out, I look at the clock, 8:30. And then I'm just kind of pacing back and forth. I'm watching the pregame show. I'm sitting there, I'm just waiting. And it gets to 10. And then it never starts at 10 because they got to do the national anthem. They got to do the run out. They got to do all of this.
They got to do the coin toss.
The game finally kicks off. And then when you want it to end because your team has the lead, that clock just seems like, instead of going a second, it goes half second. And then if your team's trailing, it's like tick, 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 tick. The clock's going is double speed. But even the national championship game, which was played on a Monday, I had to work, and I was, the day went by pretty quick because I was busy, and I got home probably 45 minutes before that game started. Got home, showered, get out, and it was 40 minutes. And it's just sitting there waiting. I was like, man, I was worried that I wasn't going to make the start of the game. And now I'm sitting here waiting for the game to start.
Yeah. Dude, what you're describing, I had that same feeling 5 weeks ago when Alabama played Georgia.
See, it's not that bad. Those 10 o'clock games, Hayden, aren't that bad.
That part I do agree with. My gosh, I sat there and I'm looking at the clock all day. I'm like, oh, it's noon. Okay, cool. Noon games go through. And the noon games felt like they took forever. Then the 3:30 games come on. And you're seeing every situation play out. And you're just like I remember Kentucky had beat Ole Miss. And I'm thinking, oh God, maybe Kentucky's not as bad as I thought they were. Like maybe Georgia is that good and they're going to beat us tonight. Like that thought crossed my mind. And then I see Wisconsin lose, and I'm like, okay, we did like that takes that win away. It's just like you're playing so many you're reading into so many variables and overthinking everything the whole entire day until finally, like once the game start, like by the end of that day, at the end of that game, I think I texted you too. I was so mentally, physically, and emotionally drained. Like by the end of that game, and like I couldn't go to sleep right away after it either. Like I didn't fall asleep till like 1 a.m. But by the time I woke up that next morning, did not get a lot of sleep that night. I woke up probably around 7 a.m. I was still like
Jacked up.
I was still jacked up. The adrenaline was still there. So it's just I don't know, man. Yeah, that is the one downside to night games. Like the adrenaline is there for a while and it just doesn't go away when the game is very close.
Uh-huh.
And that's going to be another thing that happens here in a few weeks when Alabama plays LSU. The
Yep.
adrenaline's going to be there at 11 o'clock at night, and it's going to be hard to wind down after the game. So that part I do appreciate. I have appreciated playing some noon and 3:30 games recently, um, even with the losses, because it gives me time to kind of just gripe about it and then okay, go to bed, move on to the next day. So, but yeah, I definitely see that point there,
Yeah.
100%.
But looking at the rest of Week 10, we got Duke Miami.
That
Miami's a
one's
20-point favorite in that one, but Duke has been kind of a surprise team in the ACC. I thought Manny Diaz was going to struggle his first year there, but he's 6-2.
and
They're playing hard. They've been in every game that they've played.
100%. They should have had that game against SMU. They had that game. They should have won that
Yeah,
game.
but
Um, but also one little side storyline: Manny Diaz is going up against the team that fired, or the university that
that
fired him,
fired him. Yeah, you're right. That is that
going
could
up
be a
against the
revenge
coach
game.
that they fired or that they hired to replace him, basically before they fired him too.
Uh,
So
yeah,
I know the game is about the players, but Manny Diaz in the back of his mind's like it would be nice to be the one to put that one in the L column for them.
yep. And then Ole Miss, Arkansas. I the way Ole Miss is played, they got to go. They're going to Fayetteville. I, I think Arkansas is going to give them a run. It's
Easily.
going to be curious what team, Lane Kiffin for Lane Kiffin shows up, because he was already whining that they were playing early again, and they've been a very disappointing team to me this year, because
Easily.
I had him in the playoff. I've always liked Lane Kiffin for whatever reason, but he's let me down this year.
Yeah, and I don't know if I've mentioned it on my show. You've watched several of my shows. I've mentioned maybe he could be in the running for the Florida job. Is he checked out? Are they talking behind the scenes and maybe he's just kind of like, I've got my job lined up for next year? Is there a team chemistry issue behind the scenes with all these transfers coming in? There's so many things I have questions about because Jackson Dart even has been off this year.
The tight end's wife is complaining about her husband not getting enough touches. I don't know if you saw that.
Is that the same tight end's wife that's on TikTok all the time?
Yes. Yes.
That drives me bonkers. It's like, golly. And the kid's going up. I mean, cute kid. Can't deny that. But my gosh, that drives me crazy. And so now she's complaining about him not getting enough touches.
There were some yeah, she commented on I think it was like the Ole Miss Instagram on an Ole Miss Instagram post or something like that.
What's the Ole Miss Instagram person gonna do?
Yeah, it was something along the lines of, like, in the bio week, maybe you guys can scheme up something to get my husband the ball, or something along those lines. I don't remember exactly what it was, but there was a comment that was made.
That's insane. That's that again. I talk about culture being important. That's a culture problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's 100% a culture problem. So that's interesting. And apparently, there was also allegedly that Jackson Dart cheated on his girlfriend, uh,
Yeah, I've seen that a few
and
times.
it came out right before the Kentucky game, ironically.
Ah,
So I don't know. I don't know what all's going on, but makes for even more. It makes it more fun and more intriguing every single week when there's a little bit of drama behind the scenes.
oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's so weird. I know, like I said it during the Kentucky game, the defense was very undisciplined, and it's a very familiar defense because that defense coordinator was the same defense coordinator at Alabama for several years, and I had those same frustrations with him then. So I don't know. I don't know. It's very. I'm very interested in seeing what's going to happen down the stretch. Um, couldn't finish off that LSU game. Kiffin complaining about needing or playing early games. Um, and then, of course, now apparently players' wives are complaining about touches and quarterbacks cheating on his girlfriend. So all of that's just
All is well. Which went to at a place called the Grove. I kind of would expect nothing less.
100%. And what's Ole Miss's mindset going into this game? You've got Georgia next week for basically your season. You got Georgia coming into town. You're going to Fayetteville, which is not an easy place to play. Sam Pittman has already overachieved his expectations this year. So he's probably going to keep his job. Winning this game would 100% secure that. He's already beaten Tennessee, which I think might have done enough. But you win this game, he's 100% coming back next year. You cannot fire him.
Yeah,
So there's a lot going on in this game that's going to make this very interesting.
yeah. And I mean, if you're Lane Kiffin, you're telling him like if we don't take care of business this week, Georgia ain't gonna matter. Our season's done. We're not making the playoff.
Right.
But the Michigan Oregon, I'm not holding out a lot of hope of Michigan pulling the upset there. I think Oregon's got too much. There's just been not enough consistency. Michigan probably coming off their best offensive performance of the year. No penalties, no turnovers. They went back to Davis Warren. Jack Tuttle is retired from football, which
That's insane.
probably explains why he struggled so much as he did, is because of the UCL injury that never properly healed. So they're going back to Davis Warren. They had a bit of a two QB two QB kind of thing going on against Michigan State, where they brought in Orgy for as an extra running quarterback. The offense looked like it was balanced just by kind of watching the highlights and kind of what I was listening to from other Michigan podcasts. So there's some reason for optimism, but the offense they're going to have to duplicate what they did is not turn the ball over, help the defense out, not put them in tough spots to even have a shot to win. And I don't know if it's going to be enough.
Yeah. Oregon is such an intriguing team this year. Like they started off kind of bumpy um, in that Idaho game. Then they played Boise, which you look at Boise right now, you can't really take much away from that. Oregon got the job done. They beat Boise, who's a really good football team, who they've got an extremely talented running back, who is probably the best running back in college football. Who
Would be the
basically took
Heisman front runner if it wasn't for Travis Hunter.
right, exactly, and he might deserve the Heisman Trophy. Um, so yeah, they're just a very intriguing team. They were able to pull it off against Ohio State. Dan Lanning was able to break the system basically with intentionally putting 12 men on the field to I don't know. I've never seen anything like it, and now we'll never see anything like ever like again because
Genius.
do what?
That's just genius. That's just out coaching the guy on the other sideline.
Oh
That's
yeah,
exactly what that is.
and it just seems like Ryan. I mean, of course, that you're out. It happens against Ryan Day, which makes it even funnier. Um, that I said it at the beginning of the year that Oregon probably has the best roster, top to bottom, in college football this year, um, and I stand by that. And I had them going to the national championship, had them winning the Big Ten. I they ha- I don't know. I don't know. They're such an interesting team. I don't know the word to describe it. I said it on my podcast the other day, and Nick Saban literally 2 days later said the same thing, that he reminds him of Tua. Like it's being able to see a quarterback hit his receivers in stride. It reminds me of the Tua Waddle, Tua um, Devontae Smith, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Judy. Every time I see him throw a ball and hit a receiver in stride, it reminds me of that. So he's got that capability. So they're just a very interesting team, and like I said, probably one of the most loaded rosters, probably with the most depth. And so I don't know if they're going to at least lose a regular season game. Do they play Penn State in the regular season?
They do not. No. Um,
Yeah, if they get through you guys, they're going undefeated. If they want y'all are playing the game at home, so that's an
you
advantage
know,
to you guys. But if they can get through y'all, if they beat Michigan on Saturday, I don't see them losing a game.
they have Michigan, Maryland. They go. They have Maryland at home, and then they go on the road to Wisconsin, and then they host Washington for the final game of the year.
Yeah, that's a
But
very favorable schedule.
yeah, and the other couple of other intriguing matchups here before we wrap the show up, and we can all go and watch the final four innings of the of Game 5, potentially last baseball uh, game of the season. Which hopefully it is, because I don't, the Yankees, I don't want them to win. They've caused too much trauma in my life as a Twins fan. But Florida, Georgia, down in your neck of the woods, the world's largest cocktail party. If Billy Napier pulls the upset here, you can count it now. He's earned himself another year in Gainesville.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Um, that game's going to be interesting. I don't necessarily think Florida's going to win this game, but I definitely think they are hungry to play the spoiler. Like Georgia's done what they've done to Florida the last several years, but I could see Florida wanting to come out and it's like I said. I mean, at this point, Napier. I mean, he has a lot to lose, but I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see if Florida's D line, if defense can hold up against Georgia's offense. This could be a very good game.
Yeah, I think Florida maybe gives them a game for about a quarter and a half, and then Georgia's athletes take over.
Unless
But
Beck keeps throwing interceptions, and then that's I think Beck is he's going to do that at some point in this game, where you think he's going to pull away, and then he's going to throw an interception, and Florida's still in the game somehow.
yeah, give Florida a little bit of hope, but in the end, I think Georgia is going to be too much.
Yeah,
Texas Tech, Iowa State, another interesting matchup. Uh, Texas Tech defensively not very good, but
no.
offensively can score with the best of them. Lost a heartbreaker to TCU last week, I saw, but Iowa State playing for looking to keep an undefeated season going here as they, you know, are sitting in the driver's seat, possibly setting up a chance for uh, back-to-back games of Iowa State Kansas State. The
Don't forget about BYU.
and potentially BYU, depending on what happens. I don't know if Iowa State plays BYU.
I don't
I
think
don't think
so.
they do.
But you got to think if you're Iowa State right now, you're like, okay, this has to be, not necessarily has to be, this should be our year because
And
they've knocked on the
they
door.
don't play BYU.
They don't.
Nope, they've got Texas Tech, Kansas, Cincinnati, Utah, Kansas State.
And Utah hasn't been nearly as good as I thought they'd be.
No,
But this has to be Iowa State's year, it seems like, because Oklahoma and Texas are gone. Iowa State's been knocking on that door for a long time to win the Big 12. Matt Campbell's been there for what feels like forever at this point. Hasn't taken a bigger job at any point yet. Just kind of stuck around and hung out at Iowa State, and he's got him in good position right now.
yeah. And that game is at Jack Trice. So I think Iowa State, I think it's similar as I think Texas Tech comes out guns blazing, and Iowa State's able to kind of weather the storm, create a couple of turnovers, and pull away.
Yeah.
But looking here, we talked that one. Kentucky, Tennessee. That one, Kentucky's gonna fight. This is kind of a game in spots that you look at Tennessee the last couple of years. They get into a situation. They probably seems like this is a game that is primed for Tennessee to lose.
If it wasn't in Knoxville, I would agree. If it wasn't in Knoxville, that place, I freaking hate that place, man. I'm at that point. I hate that place. That won them that game 2 weeks ago against Alabama. That environment, that place is so loud that you can't hear the person next to you. Like, and props to them. Props to them for building that kind of environment. It's frustrating, but they've been able to do it. The last 2 times Alabama's come to Knoxville. So I it's going to take a special team to beat them in Knoxville, and I just don't think Kentucky has that.
Yeah, but let's wrap the show up here. Let's pick some winners here from the games we previewed. We'll start Duke, Miami. Who do you got?
Duke keeps it close, but at the end of the day, Miami.
Yep, I'm with you, Miami. Ole Miss, Arkansas.
Everything inside me wants to pick Arkansas. Just what a great story it would be. Ole Miss has to play motivated in this game. Whatever's going on, they have to put it aside for a week. Even if they just barely get by in this game, you have to win it. You have to win this game. Or else that game against Georgia means absolutely nothing next week. So I'm going to go Ole Miss, but not confident.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think Ole Miss does enough to get a win. I think it's close. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think it's going to be in that 27-20, 27-21 type of game. I think Ole Miss controls it for most of it. Tennessee or Arkansas gets a backdoor cover.
Yeah.
And then Oregon, Michigan.
I got to go Oregon just because, like I said, I have them winning it or not have them playing in the national championship. But just too much talent, too much depth.
Yeah, I'm with you. One we didn't cover, but we'll do it for fun anyways. Minnesota, Illinois. Interesting line here is Minnesota.
I was about to say, I'm foreshadowing something for my show tomorrow night. Jamie and Nate, do not even try to steal this pick if y'all are watching. That's my upset of the week. I don't see why Minnesota is a 3-point favorite. Illinois' defensive line is just it's too good. And I think that's going to be the difference maker. And it's in Illinois, and they've done what they've needed to do this year. And I just don't think Minnesota's good enough to beat them.
Yeah, it was, especially because PJ Fleck has never beaten Brett Bielema in his time as Gophers head coach. So
Brett
interesting
Bielema's
line.
I love
Gophers
that
have been playing a lot better, but it's one of those things. I gotta see it before I can do it. So I'm gonna go with Illinois as well. Florida, Georgia.
I want to pick Florida. Um, I think DJ Lagway will play a very good game, but at the end of the day, like we said earlier, too much talent for Georgia.
Yeah, I Georgia there. No argument. Texas Tech, Iowa State.
Iowa State. Right now, they're
Iowa
one of the best teams in the Big 12. They're playing inspired. Got to go Iowa State.
Yep, and then Texas A&M, South Carolina.
I said it earlier. Texas A&M's on track to go to the SEC championship. I don't think this team is like the Texas A&M of old, where they are bound to lose just a random game after a big win. I think South Carolina keeps this game very competitive. I think that defensive line keeps them in it for 3.5 quarters. Shoot, this might come down to the final play. I wouldn't be surprised. This is one of my favorite games of the week. Flying right under the radar, but I'm going to go with A&M at the end of the day.
All right, I'm gonna go with you. I think previous years A&M loses this one, not under Mike Elko.
Right.
He's putting the URE in front of Colt. He's developing that. That's part of their culture, is establishing it, is not getting too high after a big win, staying steady and handling business. Give me the Aggies. And to wrap it up here, we got to go with the biggest game of the week: Ohio State, Penn State. Who do you got?
You know, a few weeks ago I was on your show. This was the day of the Oregon-Ohio State game. I came on here and I said Oregon was going to find a way to win that game. That means I got to do it again. I got to go with Penn State in this one, just because it worked out in my favor last time picking against Ohio State. It's in Happy Valley. I think that stadium's going to be rocking. I have no evidence or any reasoning behind this pick because I don't know who's going to be the playmaker for Penn State to step up. It's probably going to be that defensive line. That's what I think. At the end of the day, it's going to be a low-scoring game, but Penn State at home is the difference maker.
I'm kind of in the same boat as what I was last week. At the end of the day, I just keep coming back to, I think Ohio State. They're the Ohio State, Penn State. They're the same team, but Ohio State just has better talent at each spot. And the quarterback is a question to me right now. I gotta go. I'm gonna do it again. I have to go with Ohio State to get the win in Happy Valley.
That's fair. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised either way. I have no mathematical reasoning behind this Penn State pick. I don't know. It worked out last time.
And hopefully it works out again. And that sets up a big matchup in 2 weeks or 3 weeks when potentially undefeated Indiana goes to the Horseshoe.
That's going to be an interesting game because if Ohio State loses this game this weekend and then Indiana comes into town and shocks the world, they're done.
Yeah.
They're done. I mean, I wouldn't say they're done after this weekend, but if you
uphill battle for sure.
Yeah. And now I could go on my show tomorrow night and have a completely different pick. I ain't gonna lie. but right now, that is what my gut is telling me. Penn State.
But I think that wraps up this week's episode of the Three Guys Talking Ball podcast. Thanks again to Hayden for joining us. Go check out his show on Facebook Live, tomorrow it'll be live at 7 Mountain Time, 8 Central, 9 Eastern. And, hopefully back to our regular scheduled programming next week. But thank you again to Hayden for joining us, and we will talk to you next week.
Peace out.